Imagine heading to shore to cool down on a sweltering August day as you've done countless times before. Nothing seems amiss. You and your best friends are laughing, splashing, and diving into the waves. Suddenly, not one but 8 great white sharks appear, ready to tear you apart. This was the terrifying reality for Manuel Garcia and Carlos Diaz. What happened next will leave you speechless. On August 12, 1963, in Rio Jaina, Dominican Republic, 16-year-old best friends Manuel Garcia, Carlos Diaz, and Raymond Perez sought relief from the oppressing summer heat. Their destination, the breakwater near the port, a familiar spot where they had spent countless hours swimming and diving. But this day would be different. Beneath the inviting waves, something horrifying lurked. The Dominican Republic, known for its stunning coastlines and tropical beauty, is a place where the sea is woven into daily life. The waters surrounding this Caribbean nation are home to diverse marine life, from vibrant coral reefs to deadly predators. Among them are great white sharks, apex predators capable of turning serene waters into chaotic bloodbaths in a matter of seconds. These sharks, perfected by millions of years of evolution, are built for stealth, speed, and lethal precision. Typically, they hunt alone, ambushing their prey with quick, brutal efficiency. But in rare instances, these predators exhibit extraordinary behavior, hunting in groups. Recent research reveals that great whites occasionally coordinate to increase their chances of a successful kill. The waters near Rio Jaina were no stranger to these apex predators, though sightings near the port were rare. 16-year-old Raymond Perez and his best friends Manuel Garcia and Carlos Diaz were inseparable. Growing up in Rio Jaina, they spent countless days exploring their coastal town. On that sweltering summer day, the boys ventured into the breakwater at Port Rio Jaina. Built to shield the port from rough seas, the breakwater was a tempting yet treacherous playground, with its jagged rocks and slippery surfaces. That afternoon, the sea was deceptively calm, and the trio dove into the inviting water, laughing as they challenged each other to underwater games. But the weather shifted abruptly. Dark clouds rolled in over the port, transforming the once placid sea into a chaotic and unpredictable force. The boys, startled by the sudden change, scrambled to climb onto the breakwater, hoping to find safety on the jagged rocks. Waves surged with growing intensity, crashing against the breakwater and making it nearly impossible to keep their footing. A sudden, powerful swell slammed into them, knocking Manuel and Carlos off the rocks and into the churning waters below. Raymond, clinging desperately to the slippery surface, managed to pull himself out of the water just in time. From his precarious position, he could only watch helplessly as the waves carried his 2 friends farther out to sea. Manuel and Carlos were helpless against the raging current, their bodies battered by the relentless waves. The sharp, jagged edges of the breakwater had torn into their flesh. Manuel's upper right thigh was gashed deeply from being thrown against the rocks, while Carlos's arm was severely cut open after scraping against the sharp barnacles clinging to the submerged stones. Their wounds bled profusely, the crimson streaks swirling into the turbulent water. Unseen beneath the waves, a predator stirred. Great white sharks, drawn by the faintest scent of blood, began converging on the struggling boys. Raymond watched in horror as his friends flailed against the waves. He clung to the jagged rocks, powerless to help, as the current dragged them farther from shore. The laughter of moments ago had turned to desperate cries, barely audible over the roaring surf. What began as an ordinary day had become a nightmare. Little did the boys know, drowning was now the least of their worries. The first shadow appeared silently beneath the surface, then another and another. 8 great white sharks had picked up the scent of blood, each one closing in with lethal intent. These creatures, massive and powerful, were the ocean's ultimate predators. What happened next would defy belief. Manuel felt the first jarring bump against his hip. The impact nearly pulled him under, and as he turned, he saw the fin slicing through the waves. Another violent hit followed, launching him upward. The water erupted as a great white lunged, its massive jaws clamping onto Manuel's torso. Blood sprayed into the sea, fueling the frenzy as more sharks surged forward. Carlos swam toward his friend, but a second shark struck, tearing into Manuel mid-air before dragging him below. The water turned red as the predators thrashed, their tails slapping the waves in a violent spectacle. Within moments, Manuel disappeared beneath the surface. Carlos, now alone, desperately turned toward the shore, adrenaline propelling him forward. The fins multiplied, surrounding him as the sharks closed in. Nearby, a small boat docked at the port sprang into action, its driver spotting the boy's struggle and racing toward him, yelling and pointing in desperation. Just as hope seemed within reach, a massive shadow emerged from the depths. A shark lunged, its jaws clamping onto Carlos's right arm and shaking violently. His screams cut through the chaos, but another shark struck from the other side, pulling him under. The boat arrived moments too late. The sea continued to churn violently, waves crashing against the breakwater and sending spray high into the air. The predators sank beneath the stormy surface, their dark shapes disappearing into the depths. The blood streaks were quickly swallowed by the relentless waves, leaving no sign of what had transpired except for the horrified witnesses on shore. The storm raged on, seemingly determined to erase the devastation it had just unleashed. Raymond was eventually rescued from the breakwater, his trembling hands gripping the jagged rocks until help arrived. Though physically unharmed, the terror etched into his face told a story of unspeakable trauma. He would never forget the chaos, the blood-streaked water, or the haunting cries of his best friends as they disappeared beneath the waves. Manuel and Carlos were gone, their bodies claimed entirely by the unrelenting efficiency of the great white sharks. The ocean, once a source of joy and adventure, had revealed its most merciless side. The ocean's dangers are as ancient as its depths, and while stories like Manuel and Carlos's are rare, they are powerful warnings of what lurks beneath. But the ocean's deadly embrace isn't limited to one corner of the world. What happens when paradise becomes a predator's playground? Thousands of miles away in Australia, another tragedy awaited Zach Young. On the bright waters of Campbell's Beach, what began as a carefree day of surfing with friends would turn into a desperate struggle against the primal power of a tiger shark. It was November 30th, 2013 on the picturesque coastline of New South Wales, Australia. 19-year-old Zach Young and his three closest friends, Shaden Schrader, Kurt Gillian, and Lindsay Isaac, set out for a day of surfing at Campbell's Beach, a serene but remote stretch of sand renowned for its vibrant waves and stunning natural beauty. The group made their way to The Well, a popular reef break roughly 300 feet offshore near Rykes Point, ready for an afternoon of adventure. New South Wales is a haven for surfers, its coastline boasting some of the finest surf spots in the world. But beneath its beautiful waters lie a dangerous reality. The region is also home to one of the ocean's most efficient predators, the tiger shark. With its sharp senses, striped body, and reputation as a non-discriminating feeder, the tiger shark is second only to the great white in attacks on humans. These waters, while breathtaking, demanded respect, and those who venture in understand the risks they take. Zach, known for his radiant smile and unwavering faith, had recently earned his driver's license, a milestone that fueled his excitement to explore coastal surfing spots with his friends. A lifelong surfer, Zach's talent on the waves was matched only by the admiration he inspired off the board. Beyond his dedication to the sport, he was a cornerstone of his community, mentoring at-risk youth through a national youth ministry and sharing his experiences to inspire others. His energy, kindness, and passion for uplifting those around him made him a beloved figure to everyone who knew him. The ocean that Zach loved so deeply seemed serene that day, its clear waters reflecting the golden afternoon sunlight. The friends laughed as they paddled out, their boards cutting through the waves, unaware of the silent danger below. Beneath the shimmering surface, something stirred. Shadows moved with predatory intent, unseen and unprovoked, ready to strike. Just before 2 p.m., the illusion of calm shattered. From the depths, a dark shape surged upward. A massive tiger shark, estimated at 10 feet long, lunged at Zach with incredible force, its serrated teeth sinking into his legs. The peaceful day turned into a desperate fight for survival. The force of the attack knocked Zach from his board, and blood clouded the water as his friends realized the horrifying reality. Acting on pure instinct, Shaden, Kurt, and Lindsay paddled toward Zach, their adrenaline surging as they fought to save their friend. Despite the immediate danger, they reached him, using their boards and fists to drive the shark away. The predator, momentarily deterred, released Zach, retreating into the depths. The group quickly pulled Zach onto one of their boards. His injuries were catastrophic. His legs bore deep gashes and blood poured from the wounds, staining the water around them. Knowing the shark could return at any moment, the friends began the immense 15-minute paddle back to shore, their every movement filled with urgency and fear. Waves splashed over Zach's pale, trembling form as he clung to consciousness, weakly mouthing words of gratitude to his friends. Would their courage be enough to fend off a relentless predator and save their friend? The paddle back to shore felt like an eternity. They paddled with relentless urgency, their movements quick and focused as they glanced over their shoulders, scanning the water for any sign of the predator. The tension in their faces and the haste in their strokes made it clear the danger wasn't over. Finally, they reached the sand, pulling him onto the beach. When Zach reached the shore, he was in critical condition. His legs were severely mauled, and his body was pale from the significant blood loss. His breaths were shallow, and his friends had to carry him, his limp body a sign of the ferocity of the attack. Despite their best efforts, Zach's injuries were catastrophic, and his life was slipping away. Emergency services were called by nearby beachgoers who had witnessed the chaos. On the sands of Campbell's Beach, Zach's friends fought desperately to save him, their hands trembling as they tried to stop the bleeding. Gravely injured and weak, Zach, a person of deep faith, began to pray aloud, his voice faltering. With his final breath, he said, "I love you guys, I love you." A heartbreaking witness of their bond and Zach's caring spirit. Moments later, his body stilled, leaving his friends and the beach in stunned silence. The loss of Zach Young deeply shook his community and the surfing world. After the attack, Campbell's Beach was closed as water police, marine rescue teams, and Surf Lifesaving New South Wales scoured the waters for the tiger shark responsible. A biologist analysis confirmed the attacker was an 8-foot tiger shark, its powerful jaws leaving devastating wounds. Shortly after Zach's death, up to 400 surfers paddled out at Town Beach in Port Macquarie for a powerful memorial. They formed a circle on their boards, prayed, and held a minute of silence to honor Zach. Online, a tribute page overflowed with messages of love and sorrow, many recalling his warmth and generosity. Zach's friends, Shaden Schrader, Kurt Gillian, and Lindsay Isaac, expressed their determination to continue surfing, knowing Zach would have wanted them to embrace the waves they all loved. Their resilience and courage demonstrated the strength of their bond and their commitment to honoring his memory. The ocean's beauty often conceals its deadly nature. Zach Young's tragic encounter with a tiger shark emphasized this harsh reality. But decades earlier, 18-year-old Albert Kogel faced a similar fate in San Francisco Bay. A peaceful evening swim with his girlfriend Shirley O'Neill turned into a desperate fight for survival when an ancient predator struck beneath the shadow of the Golden Gate Bridge. On May 7, 1959, a warm spring evening drew 18-year-old Albert Kogler and his friend Shirley O'Neill to San Francisco's Baker Beach. The unseasonably mild weather provided the perfect escape from their college routines. With the Golden Gate Bridge towering in the distance and the sun casting long golden rays across the Pacific, the scene seemed idyllic. The pair arrived eager to enjoy the serenity of the beach, unaware of the hidden dangers lurking beyond the waves. 18-year-old Albert Kogler and Shirley O'Neill first met at a freshman dance and instantly connected. Both shared a common bond as residents of San Francisco's Sunset District and students at San Francisco State College. Albert was pursuing a degree in business and finance, inspired by his father's successful career as an investment broker in Corte Madera. On the warm evening of May 7, 1959, Albert suggested to Shirley that they head to the beach for a swim, a perfect way to enjoy the unseasonably mild weather. As they settled on a blanket near the shore, their conversation turned reflective. Albert noticed the golden cross Shirley wore and asked about her faith. She spoke earnestly about her Catholic beliefs, while Albert, less devout, admitted his curiosity about life after death. The exchange added a contemplative tone to their evening, a prelude to the unimaginable events that would soon unfold. How does a peaceful swim under a glowing sky turn into a fight for survival? The water, though brisk at 57 degrees, glistened invitingly under the fading sun. It was a quiet evening with no one on the water. Albert and Shirley waded in, laughing as they swam about 50 yards from the shore. The ocean seemed calm, the kind of evening that promised timeless memories. Yet, hidden beneath the waves, a great white shark, estimated to be nearly 12 feet long, moved silently toward its unsuspecting prey. The predator, a master of stealth and power, was about to strike with devastating force. Suddenly, a sharp cry broke the tranquility. Albert screamed as a massive shape lunged from the depths. Shirley turned in shock to see a slick gray body arching 6 feet out of the water. It struck Albert with great force, dragging him below the surface as waves churned violently around him. The water darkened with a plume of red. Albert managed to resurface, gasping for air, and shouted that it was a shark. Shirley, frozen for a moment, heard his panicked voice telling her to swim for safety. She obeyed instinctively, paddling frantically toward the shore, but stopped mid-stroke. Albert's voice still called out, weaker this time. Looking back, she saw him struggling, his arm hanging limply at his side, barely attached to his body. Determined not to abandon him, Shirley turned back into the cold, turbulent waters. She reached him quickly, her heart pounding as she noticed the extent of his injuries. Blood flowed freely from a massive wound on his left side, the telltale sign of a single ferocious bite from the shark. The monstrous animal had already fled, but Albert's condition was critical. Fighting through the shock, she grabbed Albert under his back and urged him to float on his back to conserve energy. With immense effort, Shirley began towing him toward the shore. Can sheer willpower and faith triumph in the face of overwhelming tragedy? On the beach, U.S. Army Master Sergeant Leo Day, who had been walking nearby, witnessed the horrifying attack. He ran to his car and called for help before hurrying to the water's edge. Onlookers began to gather, shouting encouragement to Shirley as she fought against the currents to bring Albert to safety. The sea seemed to conspire against her, with every wave threatening to pull them back. Yet she pressed on, moment by grueling moment, until her feet touched the sand. With help from those on shore, Shirley managed to pull Albert onto the beach. His body was cold and pale, his breathing shallow. His left arm was nearly severed, and deep lacerations ran across his chest and shoulder. Blood pooled around him, staining the sand. The group quickly covered him with a blanket while Shirley knelt by his side, cradling his head. Emergency services had been called, but the terrain made it difficult for rescue vehicles to reach the beach. The Coast Guard was on its way, but every minute felt like an eternity. Shirley, recalling their earlier conversation about faith, clutched the gold cross around her neck and spoke softly to Albert. She reminded him of his belief in God, though he had never been especially religious. Using seawater, she performed a baptism right there on the sand. Her voice trembled as she whispered prayers, holding his gaze. Albert's lips moved faintly as he repeated the act of contrition, his voice barely audible. "I love God. I love my mom and dad," he managed to stutter before his body went still. Shirley watched as his eyes fluttered closed. By the time the Coast Guard arrived to rush him to Letterman Army Hospital at the Presidio, Albert had succumbed to his injuries. It was 8:15 p.m. when he was pronounced dead, his parents at his bedside. In the days following the attack, investigators noted the extreme rarity of such an event in California's coastal waters. Shark attacks were almost unheard of in the area, with this being only the second recorded incident in the state's history. The unusual nature of the attack and its devastating outcome captured widespread attention, highlighting both the unpredictability of the ocean's predators and the extraordinary courage Shirley demonstrated in attempting to save Albert. Shirley's actions did not go unnoticed. In July of that year, California Governor Edmund Brown nominated her for the Young American Medal for Bravery, which she later received from President John F. Kennedy at the White House. 2 years later, she was also awarded the Carnegie Hero Fund Commission Medal for her heroic efforts to save Albert. Yet, no medal could erase the haunting memory of that evening or bring back the young man whose life had been so tragically cut short. The sea claimed Albert's life with brutal force, but his memory endures as a haunting reminder of nature's raw power. Decades later, on Australia's Gold Coast, surfer Nick Slater would face his own unthinkable fate. In an instant, his surfboard flew through the air, crashing down without him. The waters churned, but Nick was nowhere to be seen. What had happened? Had he fallen victim to the ocean's deadliest predator, or could he somehow survive this horrifying ordeal? The warm afternoon sun bathed the sands of Greenmount Beach on September 8, 2020. Nestled at the southern end of Queensland's Gold Coast near the border with New South Wales, this stretch of golden shoreline had always been a haven for surfers and tourists. That Tuesday was no different, and surfers flocked to the water eager to make the most of the perfect conditions. Among them was Nick Slater, a 46-year-old real estate agent from Mermaid Beach. Nick was more than just a professional, he was a cherished member of the Gold Coast community. Known for his warm personality and infectious enthusiasm, Nick had a lifelong passion for surfing. He often spoke about how the ocean brought him peace and joy, providing a much-needed escape from the demands of his career. Greenmount wasn't just a favorite surf spot for Nick, it felt like home. That day, the clear skies and the water, a comfortable 68 degrees, seemed to promise nothing but serenity. Grabbing his board, Nick headed out to join the other surfers scattered across the breaks, their figures dotting the glistening expanse of the sea. But just below the surface, the ocean concealed its darker side. The waters around Greenmount, while breathtakingly beautiful, also served as a habitat for one of nature's most fearsome predators, the great white shark. As Nick pushed further out, unaware of the lurking danger, the calm waters offered no hint of the tragedy about to unfold. Around 5 p.m., tragedy struck. Without warning, a shadow emerged beneath the waves. A great white shark estimated to be around 10 feet long charged upward. The impact was ferocious. Witnesses saw Nick's board fly into the air before splashing back down unmanned. Blood began to spread across the water as surfers nearby realized the horrifying truth that Nick had been attacked. Fellow surfer Jade Parker was the first to respond. Spotting Nick floating near his board, Jade raced toward him, fearing the worst. At first, he thought Nick might have been knocked unconscious by his board, but as he approached, the grim reality became clear. Nick was seriously injured, his left arm torn apart by the shark's powerful bite. Jade later described the scene as terrifying beyond words. Jade and a few other surfers managed to pull Nick onto his board and paddle him back to shore. The journey was frantic and desperate, with every second essential to Nick's survival. Blood trailed behind him, and while the shark seemed to have retreated, the possibility of another strike remained. When they reached the sand, a crowd had already gathered, drawn by the commotion. Lifeguards and beachgoers immediately mobilized, forming a coordinated effort to bring Nick to safety and provide life-saving care. In a race against time, can the efforts of strangers overcome the odds stacked by nature's fiercest predator? Using whatever resources they had on hand, they attempted to stabilize him while awaiting professional assistance. Within minutes, paramedics arrived on the scene, bringing advanced medical equipment and expertise. They began administering emergency treatment, applying pressure to control the severe bleeding and assessing the extent of the injuries. The team worked tirelessly to keep him alive, fighting against the critical loss of blood and the extensive damage inflicted by the shark. Nick's injuries were catastrophic, with massive trauma to his leg causing irreparable damage. The blood loss had been severe, and despite the lifeguards' quick actions and the paramedics' relentless efforts, his condition continued to deteriorate. Onlookers stood in tense silence, hoping for a miracle as the medical team worked against the odds. Tragically, their efforts were not enough. Nick succumbed to his injuries on the beach, leaving the community in shock and mourning the loss of a man whose life revolved around the very ocean that claimed him. An investigation revealed that the bite mark on Nick's surfboard formed a rough circle nearly 15 inches across. Embedded in the fiberglass was a single tooth, unmistakably belonging to a great white shark, one of the ocean's most fearsome predators. These apex hunters, with their torpedo-shaped bodies, can reach speeds of up to 35 miles per hour. Their bite force, exceeding 4,000 pounds, allows them to deliver devastating strikes with deadly precision. The attack on Nick was no exception. Quick, calculated, and tragically fatal. In the wake of Nick's death, authorities closed beaches along the Gold Coast from Burleigh Heads to the New South Wales border. Helicopters scanned the waters and shark nets were inspected for breaches. Nick's death marked the first fatal shark attack on a Gold Coast beach in over 6 decades. The incident reignited debates about shark control measures such as nets and drum lines, which have been criticized for harming marine life without guaranteeing human safety. While these methods aim to reduce shark interactions, they cannot eliminate the risks entirely. The tragedy brought to light the delicate balance between protecting beachgoers and preserving the ocean's ecosystem. For the local community, the loss of Nick Slater was deeply felt. Friends and family remembered him as a kind-hearted, passionate surfer who loved life and the ocean. Greenmount Beach, usually a symbol of joy and adventure, became a somber place in the days following the attack. The Gold Coast community mourned the loss of one of their own, while surfers and beachgoers reevaluated their relationship with the sea. Yet for many, the allure of the ocean remained, as did the understanding that every wave carries a measure of risk. Thank you for joining us for these chilling and unforgettable stories. The ocean's tranquil surface often hides a cruel reality, as Linda Horton tragically discovered. Stranded in open waters after a shipwreck with her boyfriend Dennis and Captain Ray Boundy, Lisa faced a desperate swim for survival. But beneath them, hungry sharks were circling, waiting to strike. Click to uncover the full story of courage, terror, and tragedy that will leave you questioning what you would do in the face of such relentless predators.